Welcome to EarlyBirdPicker. My name is Rafa. I'm a reseller on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, and Amazon. This is the first video in a long series planned that I've decided to name KAIZEN Reseller series. Basically, the word Kaizen, it is of Japanese roots and it means continuous improvement. So you guys probably saw my video 2 videos back where I basically described how I had taken a break from YouTube because my eBay had come to a halt. Basically all my activities on eBay, and because of that my YouTube had come to a halt, and so it's just really clear that I needed to do something to completely optimize and transform my reselling business in order to get to continue doing reselling, but also to get to continue doing my YouTube channel. And because of everything I'm going to be doing in my eBay or just my reselling business in general, I thought that could make a really interesting series that hopefully brings value and just completely shakes up and changes the content of my current EarlyBirdPicker channel, that hopefully I bring some tools to the table that I'm going to use to fix my eBay store basically, and hopefully they'll be of use to you as well. So let's jump in and get started. I do want to mention, it is worth noting that this is definitely not the very first video that I wanted to do for the KAIZEN Reseller series. The first video that I had planned to do was take a super high level, like helicopter look down at my entire reselling plus YouTube combined kind of activities, and look at it category by category and do something called value stream mapping, which is where you look at the current state versus the ideal state versus the future state. Overall, that ended up being such a big task to do. I do still plan on doing it at some point, but it was just keeping me from starting to make my videos again. And so I decided, kind of like sometimes when you're learning a new game that you're playing, instead of reading the rules start to finish, you kind of just start playing the game and then you get the hang of it as you go. That's where I'm going with this. Is in the meantime, while I'm still trying to figure out how to take that top-down look that'd make a really good video, I'm going to show you some things that I'm doing in the meantime. Like I said, some methodologies that I'm applying to my business to fix it, because I am still continuing to sell things on eBay, and I want to show you the things that I'm doing to fix it along the way while I still make that bigger video. So this video is it introduces 4 methodologies basically. So in this particular video, the ultimate goal of it is there's some, whenever I'm looking at my entire business right now, some things that, like if you're in a boat basically and it's sinking, what can you throw overboard immediately to decrease weight of the boat? That's kind of how I feel about my reselling business right now, or looking at major bottlenecks in my business to fix, and just areas that stress me out. One major area that I'm super stressed out about is the amount of unlisted inventory I have. Some of it I've had likely for 6 months or even a year, possibly longer, items in my death pile. And here's the first way that you can know if this video series is going to bring you value. If you're a reseller with a death pile that is probably more than a week or so old, you have inefficiency or waste in your reselling business, and hopefully it is not as bad as my situation, but that's basically how you can know if this video series is going to bring you value or not. If you have a large amount of items in your unlisted inventory, that is ultimately waste in your business, and there's ways that you can improve it. And that's the first thing that I've identified, that I'm really throwing a lot of methods to try to fix my business. Is not only does having a lot of unlisted inventory take up space, you know, if you're working in a small workspace, but for me it just brings a lot of stress, because I have in my mind, I love to go sourcing and I love to, you know, get new things to list, but then in the back of my head there's this growing problem of all these items that I have unlisted, and it just became necessary that this is one of the things that I'm trying to throw overboard basically and fix right off the top of the bat, and just cut a lot of waste out of my reselling business in this manner. So here are the ways that I'm gonna basically attack that. So like I said, that is the goal of this video, is to dramatically decrease the amount of items in my unlisted death pile basically. Definitely cut it in half, if not by more. This video has 4 major components that I'm going to discuss that are going to weave into how I'm going to deal with that. The first is the Japanese culture influence, basically the influence that Japan has on efficient business methodologies. Basically, a lot of the efficient business methodologies, they root back to Japanese influence. So I'm going to discuss that. The second thing I'm going to discuss is value stream mapping for your business. The third thing that I'm going to discuss is the 5S methodology for removing waste out of a system. And then the fourth component of this video is a Marie Kondo method for basically tidying up a space and sorting and organizing. So in my video a couple back, I think I mentioned that I worked for a while at Cancer Treatment Centers of America. That hospital is a cancer hospital, and in particular years ago they ran their business completely efficiently. They basically took in any possible methodology that would increase the efficiency and of their business, and they applied it in any way they could. That's where I learned the bulk of these methodologies. Most of them, not all of them. Kind of once I started learning them, then I got really into it and I just started researching it on my own. But I just do want to give a shout out, especially that is where I learned a lot of this. It is worth noting that in the years that I worked there, toward the end, they stopped applying these methods. I have no idea why. And just a few weeks ago, the Cancer Treatment Centers of America here in Tulsa actually is shutting down. And so I can't help but think that there is a direct correlation from their moving away from applying these lean business practices to ultimately their hospital failing. At the end of the day, here in Tulsa, just was no longer profitable or sustainable. But that's neither here nor there. I just do want to, if you end up researching them and see that they're leaving Tulsa, basically, I can't help but think that's the reason why. Let's get started with the influence of Japan. So the Japan culture, specifically, the culture itself really values harmony and efficiency. And I can't help but think that whenever you're talking about a reselling business, especially if you're combining it with doing YouTube, those are two major components that really would be helpful, just the balance of harmony between all the activities and efficiency. It's just great business practice. And so that's partly why so many of the methodologies that are going to be used in this project going forward have Japanese roots. It is kind of within the Japanese culture that those are two highly valued things. Another reason why so much of the roots of these methodologies are from Japan are a combination of their population versus the space that people have to live within. The high population with a low amount of space to store their items. And so given that scenario, basically if you're in that setup, if you want to have things or items in your house and not be completely overwhelmed in them, you have to basically maximize your space. And so Marie Kondo, who we'll be talking about, she is also from Japan. She is an organizational expert that travels the world. After traveling the world, her observation is that the Japan culture stands out far and above any other culture worldwide, with its focus on details and maximal use of space. Basically just the focus on the really small details of how to get the most out of their space. And so I'll be studying a lot about Japanese influence as this moves on. I do want to mention too that I'm going to start a playlist. I'll probably call it something like KAIZEN Reseller Research Playlist or something like that. If you're interested in viewing some of the videos that I've done for the research of this project, I'm going to put those in that playlist so you can see those for yourself if you're interested in going even deeper into this. Okay, the second tool that I'll be using today to basically cut my death pile in half is called value stream mapping. That in itself is a huge presentation topic that I wanted to make really big, but again, taking just a little bite of it from today, the main thing that you need to know about value stream mapping is it is a part of a lean methodology tool to remove waste out of a business system usually. And so what that means, the value stream mapping, is you are basically documenting either on paper or in my case visually. I'll show a video here in a second of your current state of affairs basically, and in this case it's going to be of my death pile. So here in a second I'll go ahead and show actually now the current state of my death pile. Okay, so here's pretty much the current state of the unlisted inventory. All these shelves plus goes over to here. There's some pots and pans here. What the plan is we're going to use a combination of the 5S technique to basically, the first S being sort. We're going to sort the inventory, and then we're also going to use Marie Kondo's technique of does it bring you joy, does it spark joy, and apply it to my death pile, the unlisted inventory. Basically, I'm going to go through each item and figure out if I'm going to keep the item. Does it bring joy in thoughts of listing it, or am I going to find a way to donate it or send it on in some other way? And I've got these two tables out my driveway set up for the sorting. We're gonna put just start with things that I do want to keep on one table, and then things that I do not want to keep, that I do not care about listing, on a different table, and we'll figure out the plan from there. So that's the first part of a value stream map, is you show the current state. And so that is the current state of my death pile right now. You can see that it is, my death pile is expanding. It's not just in one area of my early bird picker nest, it is expanding kind of to all parts of the nest. That is not good, and it's just getting out of control. Way more stuff than I could ever list by myself. The second step of a value stream map is your ideal state. That is like super in the future, what you hope that at the end of the project, that where you arrive. And then there's an in-between state called the future state, and it's kind of an in-between. So for the ideal state, my hope would be that I would have a death pile that would sustain me for either 1 week or a month. I haven't quite decided on that, but right now I have a death pile that would probably sustain me for like 6 months. Basically, if we had another COVID lockdown, shutdown, I probably have enough stuff that, you know, it would take me several months to list. That is way too much stuff. It's more than I can store, and it's keeping me from sourcing more. So I haven't quite figured out what my ideal state is, but it'd be between 1 and 4 weeks worth of inventory in case there's another emergency of some sort, but something much smaller and more manageable. So that is the ideal future. That is the ideal state. The future state, which is the in-between step, is I'm looking to cut my death pile in half, basically. And so you'll see in a second that with the clothing that I've chosen tonight, I've basically done that. And so I'm meeting my goal for the first part of this project. I wanted to add another thing to my future state, which is the next step basically, is I'm trying to get my death pile down from just where it's at right now to things that I don't dread listing. There's many items that are in my death pile that have been there for so many months because honestly, I just dread listing them because of either they're complex from the photo aspect, from the research aspect, the listing aspect, whatever it is. There's something about them that I just dread listing them. That stuff's gotta go. And in the future state, the next step, I don't want to have anything that I dread listing. Alright, so the first methodology that we're applying in getting rid of my death pile is a value stream mapping. The second methodology is called 5S. It is part of the greater lean methodology. Its roots are actually from Japan, like I was saying earlier. And so I'm going to flip the video, the camera around so you can see the Japanese word and then the translated kind of English word for what each step of the means. For today, we're trying to start in very small pieces. The only real piece of there's 5 S's, they each stand for something different. We're only addressing the first S, but I'll go through all 5 just so you know what they are. Okay, so 5S, it was developed in Japan, is a workplace organization method. Here's the first S. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the Japanese word, but basically it means sort. And so that is the very first step that we are doing in terms of my death pile is, as you can see here, I've got my 2 tables set up. I'm sorting between things that I am deciding to keep, that I want to try to list, that I do not dread listing. And this pile here is stuff that I dread listing, and I'm going to either figure out if I'm going to give it as a gift with purchase for something else that was purchased, or likely in this case just to be done with it. I'm probably just gonna donate it. The other possibility is it's Friday night. If it doesn't rain tomorrow, I might just have a garage sale and put this stuff out if I could get through more stuff. At the end of the day, here is our 2 tables we're sorting. Basically here's stuff that we're picking and here's stuff that we're passing. We're essentially picking and passing from my own inventory today. And then the stuff in blue is how we're rolling in the Marie Kondo method, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I'll probably come back to this page. The second S is set in order. And so that would be, instead of in the video that you saw where I had clothing just in all different places throughout the nest, I basically put it in order where it's in one central location, so it's easy to find. Here's the third S, shine. and that has to do with cleaning. So in this case, it'd probably mean cleaning both the clothes or whatever the inventory is out of the death pile, but then also the storage container, like literally cleaning the storage bins that the items are kept in so it stays nice and clean. This is the fourth S, standardize, and then the fifth S, sustain. So this basically, the standardize would mean that you're probably setting in place some like standard operating procedures to keep your system in order. And then the sustain would be how you're going to keep those standard operating procedures in place. And so those are the 5 S's, but don't get overwhelmed, because the only S really that we're focused on today is the sorting. So we're taking it really easy. Okay. So the first methodology was value stream mapping. The second methodology was the 5S. The third methodology that we're using today is she calls it the KonMari or KonMari. It's based off of her own name, Marie Kondo. Basically, it's the art of tidying or organizing, and then also she has some really good videos on folding. That's actually how I found her content many years ago. Is once I learned her folding methodology for folding clothes, literally, I've used those ever since. It's kind of rooted in like origami, which is, you know, Japanese roots, of course. And it's just a really like satisfying way of folding clothes, and that's always how I fold my clothes from now on. But she has some great a whole methodology that she travels the world consulting people on how to organize spaces, and so that is what's next. So for the Marie Kondo tidying method of organization, she recommends that you do it really fast. So this is not going to be an ongoing thing. So whatever area or category that you choose, it needs to be done really fast. I categorized all of and sorted all of my clothes in probably under 30 minutes. And so you want to also start, she recommends, with clothes. And this is more like her organization is for just your personal space, not necessarily a reselling business. So it's going to be a little different how we apply it. But her recommendation is start with clothes and then work your way down to like mementos or things with special meaning. If you try to start sorting things with special meaning behind them, like pictures, for example, family photos, you'll just get stuck in looking through the family photos and never get to the sorting. And so there's definitely a way to do this. But I actually did start with the clothing because I thought that would be easiest. Because here's the thing, I actually hate reselling clothing. And so to me, if I could offload a lot of the clothing that I'm not excited about, that would be really good. And so I did start with the clothing, and so I simply made 2 tables. And her big thing in terms of sorting, what to keep, what to not keep, is does it spark joy? And so I pretty much used that saying whenever I sort in my clothing for resale. Does it spark joy? Back to am I excited about listing this item, or do I dread it? So let me show you just a really brief overview of how I sorted my clothing. Okay, here is the table that I decided to keep. I only kept 3 pair of pants. These are some like Nike jogger pants that are from, I believe, 2007. So I'm going to get to say that they're retro. They're not true vintage. These are some Duluth trading pants that seemed like they had some value. And then I kept these Columbia PHG because I know the PHG of Columbia can be worth pretty good money. And these were all in good condition. Next, I kept a few sweatshirts. This one I just kind of thought was funny. It's a like cigar company. It's a really nice heavy duty sweatshirt, good condition. This one, because I know the sold comp on it is Beverly Hills, California, about 25 bucks. It's missing part of its label, but it still has enough to show the size, so that's all I was concerned about there. And then last is this Oklahoma sweatshirt on a vintage jersey tag, so I just like this one. Okay, next this is a lot of 5 FootJoy golf shirts, the performance type. They're really super kind of more expensive ones. These are basically like new condition. They're all the same size. The plan is to lot these together. I know that'll sell really well, really fast. Okay, the next is this TASC Task running shirt. It's a higher end run specialty brand. Same thing for this icebreaker shirt. I'm gonna keep that one as well. Then I've got this, I believe, more of an older Majestic tag with like, oh, I can't remember what team this is, but I remember looking it up and it was pretty rare. And then this body glove, like wetsuit type thing. It's the right season for this, and this should bring some pretty good money. I've checked over the condition. It looks good, so I'm keeping those. All right, then I've got some polos here. This is an American Airlines polo. And then I've got 2 McDonald's polos. These actually have pretty good value and they're the same size, so I'm going to lot them together. So of all my clothing, that's the only stuff I'm keeping. So to try to help me out in the future, I've tried to like look over the things I'm keeping and make some generalizations about things that I'm basically choosing to pick or pass on in the future. So for the pick, I'm seeming that I like employee workwear, high-end run specialty, sweatshirts that are vintage, brand name performance like golf shirts. I really actually love selling those. And then retro, Nike, that always goes pretty good, or vintage if I could find it. And then the Columbia PHG. So those are the biggest themes that I could find in stuff that I've decided to keep. Let's look at the stuff that I'm deciding to get rid of. And so I haven't counted, but I can just tell based on the number of items on each table that I'm definitely getting rid of more than half of my inventory. All right, this is a vintage Jansport Wharton shirt. I'm getting rid of this one. It has a stain on it, and I'm trying to get rid of things basically that are made trouble to list. This is actually a nice craft shirt. It's running, but I just don't feel like listing it, so that's all it comes down to. Here's 2 LL Bean shirts that they're boring to me. I don't feel like listing them. This is a local single stitch shirt that probably would never sell. Same thing on this one. A Tommy Bahama one. I just am super bored by this. I don't feel like listing it. This one is actually Columbia PFG, but it is like a Kansas, it's a KU sorority shirt, and it is just so specific. I just don't feel like listing it and waiting for someone to buy it. Got a Nike shirt that's just a pretty generic Nike shirt, and another one over here actually. Pretty sure this is a LeBron hoodie. I shouldn't have bought this one. The zipper sticks on it, and so I'm trying to move toward things that are more in excellent condition when I'm deciding to pick them, and so that I don't have to put some type of line in the description like, oh, be careful of this, or anything that would cause the buyer to want to return it or ask for a partial refund. And so this one actually does have some value, but the zipper is not working well, and so I just don't feel like dealing with it. These are actually some probably Jimmy Johnson racing shirts that I just got a weekend or so ago. I listed another lot of them, and it took me like probably 2 hours, and I did not make that much money from them. And so I'm going to focus more. These shirts don't have that much value individually because they're not vintage, and so I'm going to focus more, if I'm going to do t-shirts, on ones that have high value individually. Next are 3 sets of Realtree pants. I've done really well with Realtree in the past, but the problem is Realtree licensed their patterns, basically their camo patterns, to other brands. The brands that these are licensed to are just really not that well known or not that valuable. On this one, for example, it's Gander Mountain, and so these 3 just not super valuable, and I just don't feel like messing with them. This is probably a vintage pair of Big Ben. They're so thrashed, they're missing, I think these might be Wrangler. For whatever reason, I just don't feel like messing with these, getting rid of those. This one actually is a really cool shirt. I really love the tag on this one. It's a really cool wolf tag, but the deal on this one, it has so many holes in it. Again, I just don't feel like having to point all of those out in hopes that someone would be okay with buying it. So I'm getting rid of this one. This one is I believe, a single stitch shirt, so that's probably why I picked it, but it's probably, who's ever heard of this one? It is a Germany shirt, but it's like some type of brand or something that I just don't think is well known. Moving on from that. Moving on from this Hard Rock shirt, because I do believe it's vintage, but I don't have a way to truly know if it's vintage, and so I don't feel like messing with it and guessing. I'm trying to, if I say something's vintage, be 100% sure of it, and I just don't feel like messing with this one. Okay, these next 4 all have the same thing in common. They're missing their size tag, and so wolf shirts are really in right now. This is a single stitch wolf shirt. It's from '98, so I thought it would be good, but I really do not enjoy measuring shirts and then spending time. It probably takes me honestly 10 minutes to try and make a solid guess about what size to list it in as, and that's just too long for a shirt that might bring like 15 or 20 bucks. Same thing with these 3 Nike embroidered like mock neck sweaters or whatever. They actually would probably be pretty valuable because I think that they're probably older just based on the design and the embroidery of them. They're all missing their size tag though, and I just don't feel like trying to guess on the size. So we'll go back to our pick or pass. The big thing that I can take away from why I'm choosing to pass on stuff, no tag. I really am going to start looking at that. If something doesn't have a tag, it's going to have to be like a super obvious, you know, valuable for some other reason. Condition issues, no stains, no tears, and t-shirts that are just not valuable on their own, like those racing t-shirts. Alright, so I'm actually pretty happy with how fast I was able to move through the clothes, and the method that I'm using to determine sorting the, you know, what I'm going to keep the list and then what I'm going to pass on. I really wish that I had whittled my what I'm going to keep down to even smaller, but this is just a starting place, and it removes more than half of my clothing inventory and just takes that burden off of me basically, and I'll figure out what to do with those. Like I said, probably just donate them. And so I hope that this kind of series of methodologies that I'm combining is helpful to you in some way. What I'm going to do over the weekend is continue to work through all of my unlisted inventory category by category and do the exact same thing, so that at the end of the weekend I hope to have a way less smaller just death pile basically. And so please drop a comment below if anything stands out to you in this video that's helpful to you, if you want to give it a try of some sort, or if you have another method that you want me to add to my mix that I would be happy to try and add. But that's basically it for this video, and so thank you so much for watching this episode of Early Bird Picker, video 1 of Kaizen Reseller series. Please hit the like and subscribe, and as always, I'll see all y'all on the next video.